I never thought I'd be the kind of person who shared a true ghost story, let alone one that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. I'm a 37-year-old systems analyst, deeply skeptical by nature, the kind of guy who double-checks the locks and keeps a fire extinguisher in every room. I believed in stress-induced hallucinations, creaking houses, neurological glitches, not the supernatural. Not voices that answer you in your sleep. But now I'd give anything to go back to the days when I could believe that the unknown was simply a matter of perception. It started last winter, just after New Year's, when I moved into the duplex outside Portland. My previous apartment had been a disaster. Thin walls, leaky plumbing, and a landlord who thought repairs were a myth. When I found a duplex on Ridgeway Lane, it felt like an upgrade. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a working fireplace, and yard. The price was suspiciously low, but I was told the owner just wanted long-term tenants. The house didn't feel creepy at first. A bit cold, maybe too quiet, definitely. My closest neighbor was a retired schoolteacher named Bernice who waved from her window, but rarely came outside. The other side of the duplex was empty, undergoing renovations, the landlord had said. For the first couple weeks, I enjoyed the solitude. No traffic, no parties, no stomping neighbors. The strange dreams began around the 3rd week. At first, they weren't terrifying. I'd find myself walking down a hallway that never ended, the walls lined with doors that pulsed like they were breathing. Sometimes I'd hear a muffled sound behind one of them, humming, or a wet scraping noise. I'd always wake up before I could touch the door. I chalked it up to stress that I was working long hours, handling a nasty project rollout at work. I even joked with a coworker that my brain was defragmenting itself in the weirdest ways. Then came the voice. It was maybe 3:12 a.m., I remember because I glanced at my phone after the first time it happened. I had been dreaming of a room with black walls and a crib in the center, though I couldn't see inside the crib. There was something wet dripping onto the floor. I woke up sharply, sitting bolt upright, the air cold and still. My phone screen lit up next to me. I didn't remember grabbing it. And then, just as I was about to lie back down, I heard it. A low voice, not inside my head, but not in the room either, like it had traveled a long distance through something thick like oil or tar. It spoke a single word. Yes. I froze. I hadn't said anything that I knew that I was alone. The doors were locked, the windows sealed. And yet the word had come clearly, deeply in response. Like an answer. To what? I turned on every light in the house and checked every room, even the basement. Nothing that silence, that in my own breath sounded too loud. I stayed up until morning, heart hammering like I was waiting for something to knock on the window. Over the next few nights, it kept happening. Not every night, but enough. Always around 3:12 a.m., always when I was on the edge of waking. The word changed sometimes. Yes. Closer. Cool me. The voice was male, I think that or something trying to sound male. It had a guttural quality, not rough exactly, but resonant like it vibrated through my skull instead of through the air. The worst part was that sometimes I did speak in my sleep. I recorded myself after suspecting I might be answering without knowing it. On the 5th night of recording, I caught it. The audio was fuzzy. My phone isn't the best, but unmistakable. My voice, "Are you there?" Other voice, "Yes." I don't remember saying that. Not consciously, but there it was clear as anything. I played it back a dozen times. I tried convincing myself it was a trick, some kind of dream echo, a hallucination overlaid by memory. But the timing, the cadence, it was call and response. I started sleeping with the lights on. I brought my mattress into the living room and slept with the TV on low volume, trying to drown out the possibility of the voice returning. It didn't help. That week, I began waking up to find my feet dirty. Not just a little, caked with dust, small scratches on my soles like I'd been walking barefoot on rough concrete. Once, I found a dead spider clinging to my ankle. I don't sleepwalk, that I never have. But something was happening while I wasn't awake, something I wasn't initiating. On January 28th, things escalated. I woke up in my bed, not the living room where I'd gone to sleep. My sheets were muddied and my hands were cut and red, like I'd been digging through stone. But what made me almost vomit was the smell, the unmistakable stench of earth. Damp, old earth, like a graveyard after rain. That morning, I discovered something that still keeps me awake. There was dirt on the hallway carpet, leading from my bedroom to the basement door. I hadn't been in the basement for days. I rarely used it, too cold, too damp. But when I opened the door, I saw something that made my skin prickle. The light was already on. I don't remember turning it on. I walked slowly down the steps, and at the bottom was my shovel. The one I kept in the garage, covered in fresh soil. Beside it, on the cement floor, was a hole. A shallow one a foot deep that I could see the trowel I'd once used for my garden stuck blade first into the dirt. There was no way I'd done this. I would have remembered that I had to remember. I backtracked through everything I knew, trying to find a logical answer. Sleepwalking, mental break, someone gaslighting me. But nothing made sense. Nothing explained the voice that now answered even when I didn't speak aloud. You hear me now. We are closer. I stopped going to work, that I couldn't focus, that I started locking myself in the bathroom at night, sitting in the tub with the lights on, just to avoid sleeping. But sleep always came eventually. And the voice. The voice was always waiting. When you're being haunted, or whatever you want to call it, there's a shift that happens inside you. You stop thinking about escape and start thinking about survival. I'd always thought haunted people were passive victims, but the truth is it's not weakness. It's exhaustion, that it's terror wrapped in bone-deep fatigue. You do what you must to last until morning. That's where I was. It was early February when I stopped sleeping entirely. Or tried to. I sat awake for 2, sometimes 3 days in a row, pounding energy drinks, pacing my hallway, staring at the walls like they might speak. They didn't need to. That voice spoke enough. Not every night. That was the trick. Sometimes it left me alone just long enough to make me doubt, to lull me into the false calm of normalcy. I think maybe it's over. Maybe it was a breakdown, maybe stress. And then, at 3:12 a.m., like clockwork, come. The voice was no longer just answering. It was demanding. I started hearing scratching. Not rats, that I've lived in places with rodents. This wasn't that. This was slow, deliberate, like long fingernails dragging against the drywall. I'd hear it from inside the walls, under the floor, even once behind the fridge. But mostly, and most disturbingly, from beneath the basement door. I'd locked the basement weeks ago after finding the dirt and shovel. Even nailed a board across it like some kind of horror movie cliche. Still, the sound continued. Scratch, scratch, scratch. One night, I stood on the other side of that door for 2 hours, holding a kitchen knife, listening. It was subtle, almost like it was trying not to be heard or teasing me. When I pressed my ear to the wood, I swear I could hear something breathing. Something big. By this point, I'd stopped recording my sleep. I couldn't bear to hear myself talk back anymore. I deleted the earlier recordings, thinking maybe that would stop whatever it was. It didn't. Worse, I found something else on my phone, something I didn't record. It was a video, timestamped 3:14 a.m., 2 days prior. I don't remember filming it. I don't remember ever opening the app. But it was me, sitting up in bed, staring straight at the camera, and smiling. Not a normal smile, my mouth was too wide, too stiff, like I didn't know how it was supposed to look. And behind me, in the mirror on my dresser, was something tall and dark and moving, just barely visible in the glass. When I paused it at the right frame, I saw its hand on my shoulder. I threw my phone across the room. I didn't pick it up for days. Sleep deprivation does things to you. Your mind slips, time collapses. You stop trusting your senses, your body, your sanity. I began hearing my name in everyday sounds, the fridge clicking on, the wind, the pipes. My own breath sometimes came out sounding like whispers. Then the front door, started opening on its own. The first time, I thought I'd left it unlocked. But the second time, I know I didn't. I locked it. I checked 3 times. Still, it stood open when I came back from the bathroom at 3:20 a.m., cold air rolling in like fingers dragging across my skin. I moved a heavy chair in front of it. It scraped along the wood every time it opened, and it still opened. One morning, I found muddy prints in the hallway. Human-sized, but barefoot and too long. The toes looked wrong, crooked that I couldn't tell if they were leading toward the door or away from it. I stopped eating, my hands shook constantly. The lights flickered more and more often, and the cold in the house became permanent. Not even a fireplace helped. It was like something had sucked the warmth out of the place. On February 19th, I woke up on the basement floor. That was the worst moment of my life. Not because I'd sleepwalked, not even because I had no memory of going down there, but because when I opened my eyes, I realized I was not alone. I didn't see it at first. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the laundry machine light across the way. But I heard a slow, wet inhale. Then, you're listening now. It wasn't from across the room. It was beneath me. I scrambled to my feet. My knees were bleeding. My shirt was soaked with sweat. I backed up against the wall and flipped the basement lights on. There was no one there. No footprints, no breath. Just a hole. The shallow grave I thought I'd seen earlier. It was deeper now, at least 4 feet down, and something was wrapped in burlap at the bottom. I moved out that morning, packed what I could, and drove to a motel 40 minutes away. I didn't go back to work. I didn't tell anyone. What could I say? Hey, my house is haunted by a voice that speaks in my sleep and tells me to dig up my floor. But the voice followed me. 2 days into my motel stay, I heard it again right before dawn. A whisper sliding between the sheets like breath against my neck. We know now where you are. I checked out within the hour. Tried another hotel. The same thing happened. Not right away, but always eventually. I started keeping journals, tried to track patterns. I noticed something chilling. The voice only came if I slept. Not napped, slept at REM, dreaming that's when it crept in. So I tried to stop sleeping altogether. That worked for maybe 4 days before I collapsed in a supermarket aisle. I woke up in the hospital, 0.4 drip in my arm. Nurse adjusting monitors. The room was quiet except for the beeping and the whisper. Rest. Let go. Let me in. It wasn't spoken aloud. It was inside me. I left the hospital after just under 12 hours. The doctors told me I was suffering from exhaustion, dehydration, and possibly a psychotic break. They wanted to keep me for observation, but they didn't hear what I heard. They didn't feel it, the way the lights dimmed slightly when I blinked too long, the way the air turned cold when sleep crept too close. I knew I had to stay awake. That voice, whatever it was, didn't just speak when I slept. It was waiting for me to slip under. And I wasn't ready for what would happen if I stayed too long down there. I booked a rental car and just started driving. I had no destination in mind. That I think part of me believed that if I just stayed in motion, it couldn't find me. That maybe it was tied to the house or to the bed where it all started. But after 36 hours on the road, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks, I pulled off somewhere in Idaho, a nameless stretch of back road with one gas station and a sad motel tucked behind it. I hadn't slept in 4 days. My hand shook as I paid for the room. The attendant didn't even look at me. The room had stained carpet and a cracked mirror, but it didn't matter. I was too tired to care that I took 5 caffeine pills and wrapped the scratchy motel sheets around me and tried to read old Reddit threads about sleep paralysis and shared consciousness. None of it helped. At 2:57 a.m., I fell asleep without meaning to, and I found myself somewhere else entirely. I wasn't in the motel. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. The dream was sharp, not floaty or fragmented like most of my dreams had been. I was standing in a long, narrow hallway. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, soaked through with something black and slimy. I could hear water dripping somewhere far away. Every step echoed like I was in a chamber, not a house. There were no windows, only doors, all closed, all identical. Except one at the end of the hall. It was open, and inside, someone was standing. He wasn't facing me, just standing with his back to the door frame, his head tilted as if listening. He was tall, impossibly so, his shoulders crooked, spine too long, his clothes all wrong. Out of place, old, like he'd stepped out of a painting and didn't quite fit the dimensions of the real world. I couldn't speak that I couldn't move. Then, slowly he turned, and though his face was wrong, stretched gray, like melted wax, his voice was the same one I'd been hearing for weeks. "You're finally here." I woke up with my mouth open in a silent scream. My body refused to move, that why lungs wouldn't expand. And then, a single, rasping breath not from me, but beside me. The weight on the mattress shifted. The voice was closer than ever before. "You opened the door." I didn't sleep again for 3 more days. I couldn't, but the dreams came even when I blinked for too long. Hallways, footsteps, and the thing, getting closer. I started researching lucid dreaming, ways to take control, techniques to stay grounded. Most of them failed. One time I managed to scream, "Wake up!" in the dream and actually woke. But when I did, I was holding something, a long, splintered wooden match. I don't smoke. I realized then that it was getting worse. It wasn't just in my mind anymore. Whatever it was, the voice, the force behind it, it was pushing through the barrier between waking and sleep. It was bringing things back with me, and I think I was bringing pieces of myself to it. My nose started bleeding. Always at 3:12 a.m., a tiny red line trailing from my nostril down my lip and onto my pillow. I took pictures, tracked in a notebook. It wasn't random. Something was extracting me, bit by bit, night by night. One morning, I woke to find writing on the bathroom mirror. 3 words, written in blood, almost. fully open. I left the motel that afternoon and drove until I nearly passed out on the freeway. When I finally stopped at a rest station to splash water on my face, I saw something in a mirror above the sink that made me drop my phone into the basin. My reflection blinked before I did. After the rest stop mirror incident, I stopped looking at my reflection altogether. I didn't brush my teeth, didn't comb my hair, didn't shave. Every reflective surface felt like a trap, like I might catch a glimpse of something behind me that I wasn't supposed to see. Or worse, that I'd see myself still standing there after I walked away. I drove with the rearview mirror tilted toward the ceiling. And despite everything, I kept moving. Constantly. I hit 6 states in 5 days, sleeping only in parking lots, in the driver's seat, engine running, doors locked. Sometimes I pulled over and slept during the day, hoping whatever it was only came at night. Sometimes I went 2 days with no rest and started seeing shapes in my peripheral vision, shadows that darted behind trees, a dark figure crouching by the roadside, vanishing when I turned my head. Then came a motel in Kansas. It looked abandoned from the outside. Faded blue paint, empty pool, a flickering no vacancy sign that clearly wasn't accurate. But I was hallucinating, sleep-deprived, and at the edge of collapse. Inside, the lobby was emptied at an front desk clerk, no bell, no music. Just a dusty air freshener scent and a key already sitting on the counter. Room 103. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think. I just took the key. The room was pitch black inside. Even the bedside lamp didn't work. But I collapsed on the bed anyway and was unconscious within seconds. That's when I saw it. Or rather, that's when I woke up in the dream. Same hallway as before. Same wet, rotting wallpaper and long, endless stretch of doors. But this time I wasn't standing. I was being dragged. Face up, my back scraped the floor as 2 invisible hands pull me by the ankles, faster and faster down the corridor. Doors slammed open on either side of me. Screams spilled out of them. Some sounded like mine. Some didn't. I kicked and screamed, but no sound came from my throat. Just the rush of wind and the clatter of my heels dragging over warped floorboards. At the end of the hall stood the door. The original door. The one I kept seeing ajar in every dream. But this time it wasn't just open. It was waiting. The man was standing beside it. Not inside. Not behind it. Beside. He turned his head with that unnatural motion, like his neck was full of sand, not muscle. Then he smiled. He raised his hand, and I swear to God, it had my fingernails. My scars that my exact hand. One more night, he said in that voice, gravel and decay and something deeper. And we trade. I woke up screaming, this time out loud. My voice echoed off the bare motel walls. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the second voice that screamed with me. Not beside me. From inside my own mouth. 2 voices. Both mine. Both screaming. I looked down at my hands, point one of them. The right had blood under the nails. And they weren't the same length anymore. My right hand fingernails were slightly longer. The same length as his had been in the dream. I ran to the bathroom. Turned on the light, the only light that worked. And on the mirror, again in blood, was written, Trade Night, 3:12 a.m. That was tonight. Something else had changed too. My voice. I didn't notice it at first, not really. But when I called out to the front desk, or muttered to myself in panic, I realized there was a depth to it now. A low, distant rumble behind my own words, like someone else was talking with me. When I whispered hello, I heard a second hello behind it, barely audible but unmistakable. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was sharing me. I tried everything after that. Sage. Salt. I even drove to a church and begged a priest to bless me, but he looked at me like I was crazy. He offered prayer, but I saw it in his eyes. He was scared of me. Not for me. I barely made it through the day. The moment I began to nod off, my nose bled. When I blinked too long, I heard footsteps behind me. At one point, I passed a shop window and saw a reflection of myself that didn't stop walking when I did. And now, I think I understand. The voice in my sleep, it wasn't talking to me. It was reaching for me, like someone knocking on a window, asking to come inside. And I had been answering in every dream that in every whisper. I'd invited it. The trades weren't metaphorical. They were real. Pieces of me, night by night. I don't think I can stop it now. Not fully. But maybe if I go back to where it started, I can contain it. I've made the decision. I'm going back to the house. I don't think I drove back to the house. I arrived there, yes, but how I got from Kansas to that isolated stretch of woods in Pennsylvania is a blur of cracked asphalt, rust-colored clouds, and lost hours. It was as if the road bent around time to ensure I arrived exactly when I needed to, or rather, when it needed me to. Because I no longer believed this was about me at all. I arrived just after dusk. The house was still there, hunched behind a veil of bare trees and crooked fences, weathered and brooding. Nothing about it looked physically different, yet it felt aware, like it had been watching me all this time, patiently, unblinking, waiting. The windows were dark, but the one on the second floor, the one from my first dream, was fogged. Someone had breathed on it from the inside. I parked my car along the narrow dirt shoulder. Every part of my body begged me not to go inside. My fingers trembled on the keys. My stomach clenched like something alive was coiling inside it. But the voice inside me, his voice, was no longer whispering. It was humming, low, deep, and warm, inviting. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. It swung open before I even touched it, creaking like a deep breath released after holding for too long. The smell hit me first, a mix of mold, rotted wood, and something metallic. The furniture was gone, replaced by sheets draped over phantom shapes. The wallpaper peeled like old skin. The floorboards sagged beneath my steps as if adjusting to my weight. And everywhere were mirrors. Tiny, antique ones hanging on the walls. A full-length one by the stairs. A cracked bathroom mirror reflecting the hallway in warped symmetry. None of them were dusty in fact. Each was spotless, too clean, as though they'd been watched through, not into. I caught movement in the full-length mirror. My reflection was delayed. Just half a second, just enough to know it was wrong. I reached the second floor, heart thudding in sync with the stairs. At the top was a long hallway, the exact one from my recurring dreams. It even smelled the same, damp plaster, wet wood, and something old behind it all. I walked, counting doors. 5, 6, 7. Each was closed tight, but the eighth door was open just a sliver, and I knew what was behind it. My dream had taken me here over and over, but this was no longer sleep. The moment my fingers touched the knob, the deep voice inside me, the one I thought I had silenced, answered aloud. "We are home." The voice didn't just speak from my mouth. It vibrated my bones. It used me like a bell uses a clapper. The door opened. Inside was a child's bedroom. Everything was dust-covered, water-stained, and aged except the crib. The crib was new, stark white, untouched, and inside it was a bundle wrapped in dark red cloth. It was moving. No, breathing. A single baby rattle lay on the floor. I approached it against every screaming instinct. And that's when the reflection in the nursery mirror moved on its own. Not copying me, not mimicking, just moving, walking toward me with its arms outstretched and that awful smile splitting its face in two. It was him, not my reflection. Not anymore, but wearing my skin, wearing it better. "Thank you for carrying me," he said through the glass. He stepped forward, not in the room, but in the mirror. A mirror world version of me, darker, thinner, eyes black and glistening. "I couldn't reach without your dreams." The thing in the crib whimpered. The reflection's head twisted toward it with immediate rage. "Shut it up." I stepped back. It wasn't his baby that IT was mine. That was the sick realization. In the weeks of nightmares and blackouts, he'd been living through me, using my body to create, and now he wanted to stay. I ran, down the stairs, out the door, heart slamming against ribs that no longer felt like mine. But the house moved with me. Every step was heavier than the last. Every breath was shared. I made it outside barely, felt on my knees. The sky above swirled with thick, black clouds, but only above the house, like a storm frozen in place. I screamed for help. No one came, but the earth answered, a low rumble beneath me, like laughter. I looked down and saw my own shadow shifting. It was no longer shaped like me. It had horns. I don't know how long I sat outside that house, staring at the crooked porch where the darkness had finally begun to leak. The front door was still open, just as I had left it, but now the inside was darker than it should have been. Not a lack of light, a presence of something else. A thick, sentient shadow breathing visibly in the cold night air. Every few seconds, it seemed to pulse outward slightly like it was sniffing. I should have left, run, sprinted into the trees, and never looked back. But I couldn't, because something inside that house still had me. A part of me, more than just the voice, more than just dreams. And now, it had something worse. The child. My child. I had never told anyone about the night in Missouri. The blacked-out memory. The motel room with blood between the sheets. The way I woke up, gasping, bruised, and sore in places that didn't make sense. I had assumed it was another nightmare. But then there was the rattle, and the breathing bundle in the crib. That wasn't dream residue. That was real. And he had used me to bring something into the world. I had to go back inside. I crossed the threshold just as the sky above the house seemed to bend. A sharp crack rang out, not thunder but bone. The clouds pulsed like a heartbeat, low and slow and enormous. Inside, the hallway had changed. It was longer now, infinite. The doors multiplied, warped into unnatural shapes. Some were vertical, others horizontal. One door hovered a foot off the ground, and they were all breathing. The entire house was alive, sucking in stale air, exhaling rot and memory. At the far end, beneath a flickering bulb, was a mirror, full length, antique, gilt-framed and perfect. He was standing in it. No more hiding. No more pretending to be me. He had his own face now, and it was the most horrifying thing I'd ever seen. Not monstrous, not demonic, just mine, but better. Sharper cheekbones, fuller hair, clear eyes that a jawline like carved stone. Every flaw corrected, the way I wish I'd looked my entire life. He smiled, and the walls around us shivered. "You've given me so much," he said. "Time, voice, flesh." I opened my mouth, but my words came out twice, layered beneath his own. "You owe me," he said, and I realized he was right, because I had let him in. In every nightmare, I hadn't fought back. I had been curious, complicit, that in every mirror I lingered in every strange whisper I followed, I had answered him. "Your body's almost ready," he said, "but it needs one more thing." I didn't ask what, because I already knew. He needed consent. Even demons need permission to fully enter. And I was about to give it. Unless. I looked into his eyes and realized what I had to do. I stepped toward the mirror. He mimicked me, but with perfect posture. A confident stride. I touched the glass. The tea was warm. "I accept," I said. His grin widened, and then I did something he didn't expect. I shattered it. With my fist. Blood sprayed. That MY knuckles broke. But the mirror screamed. Not like glass. Like flesh. The walls buckled. The hallway twisted in on itself. The house screeched. And he was no longer in the mirror. He was in me. But he wasn't alone. Because when I shattered the glass, I felt something else come through. Not from behind it. From beneath it. A third presence. Older. Angrier. Something even he had trapped. Something that wanted both of us. And now it was free. I felt it crawl up through the bones of the house, into my legs, up my spine. I screamed. He screamed. And something inside me laughed. I woke in a hospital. At least. It looked like one. White walls. Nurses. Machines beeping softly. My hand was bandaged. That MY's burned. A woman stood beside me. Blonde. Soft voice. Familiar. She said she was my wife. That we just had a baby. That I'd been in a coma for 4 days. I told her, "That's impossible. I don't know you." She smiled sadly and said, "You do. Just not yet." Then she left. The nurse came in, checked my vitals. And when she leaned down to adjust the four, she whispered, "You gave consent. It's been 6 months. My memories shift like sand. I can't trust what's real. But I know something crawled through me into this world. And it's still here. Sometimes I hear the child crying from the attic. I don't have an attic. Sometimes the mirror fogs up, even when I haven't showered. And when I sleep, I hear a deep voice saying, "I only needed your yes." But the worst part, when I speak now, in public, in conversation, on the phone, sometimes people flinch. One woman even cried. I asked her why. She said, "You talk like two people." Last night, I looked in the mirror. Just for a second. My reflection blinked late again. But this time, it didn't blink at all.